Master Nagarjuna has said, and Master Nagarjuna has said that because the Buddha has given all his teachings, the entire teachings of the Buddha are based on the teaching of the dependent origination. Therefore, in his verse of salutation in the Madhyamaka Karika, he has praised the Buddha for teaching dependent origination on his own. And then at the end of the Madhyamaka Karika, the treatise, fundamental treatise of the middle way, he also pays homage to the Buddha, feeling grateful for teaching dependent origination, saying, I prostrate to Gautama, who has taught out his compassion the holy Dharma to rid us of distorted views. So, in order to overcome the ignorance, which is the root of all suffering, by teaching very clearly the suchness of things, very clearly, and showing the paths to fulfill one's goal in one life, as well as ultimately leading to the highest goal of enlightenment. The means that by which you lead to these goals is understanding the reality. And therefore, the Master Nagarjuna has praised the Buddha for showing the unmistaken view which does away with ignorance. And in order to do away with distorted views, misconceptions, you cannot do it merely by praying or through rituals, but you have to understand and gain insight into the reality of things. And that's the only way, which is very clear to everyone. For example, if we are ignorant about alphabet, and then we also may, on one hand, we have ignorance. There is ignorance about alphabet in general, and then there's also an ignorance which actually misperceives different letters. So these ignorance cannot be overcome merely by praying that they may go away. And also, if you this will not go away by meditating and cultivating compassion, nor by meditating on deities, nor by doing prostrations. Now, this ignorance about the alphabet has to be dispelled by knowing the alphabet. So the ignorance about reality, the multiplicity of things, as well as the suchness of them, this ignorance has to be overcome by developing the insight and understanding, the knowledge of the multiplicity of things, as well as suchness of things. And therefore, Master Nagarjuna says, the Buddha has taught the sacred Dharma in order for us to get rid of all distorted views. And so, with regard to view, there are the views with regard to the varieties of things, the multiplicity of things, and also the views in relation to the actual reality of things. And so why did the Buddha teach all these give all these teachings is he didn't impose his own ideas on the disciples, but he taught in accordance with the mental predispositions of the different disciples. Whatever accords with the mental dispositions of the different disciples, he gave these different teachings. And within the teaching of the Buddha, there are many different philosophical views. And because the Buddha was a compassionate one, and therefore he has given all these different teachings which are suitable to the different disciples at the different times. And therefore Master Nagarjuna praised the Buddha, paid homage to the Buddha for teaching the holy Dharma in order to rid us of all the distorted views, and he taught this out of his compassion. And so the Buddha has many qualities, such as compassion and the physical attributes. But the mainly, as is said in Abhisamaya Alamkara, the Buddha gives all kinds of teachings. So it shows that he has an unexcelled wisdom, and so why that has happened is because of having meditated and cultivated the wisdom of emptiness, which in turn is meant cultivated for the purpose of the complete goal. And the Buddha has done that, and we need this, and therefore the essence of Buddha's teaching is the combination of the unity of compassion and emptiness. The animals, of course, cannot do much because of lack of intelligence, but if we, as humans, we should be compassionate, warm-hearted, and then you will be happy. And in making your livelihood in one life, if you look at things from a broad perspective, then you will not make much mistakes. If you are only if you focus only on one thing, then you will make mistakes. So you need, to say it in English, in holistic, you need to be holistic. So it is very important to try to look from various perspectives and try to solve achieve one's goals. So the reality is that things happen due to many different causes and conditions, and therefore in order to see the reality of things, you have to look at it from various dimensions, various angles. What are the causes, what are the reasons to bring about some things. So if you look at, for example, dice, you'll see its different faces. One face has 3 dots, and others have another has 6 dots, and still another has 2 and 4 and 5 dots, and so forth. So you'll be able to say, oh, a dice has these many sides, and on each side are this many this and this number of dots, and so forth. You cannot say a dice has only 2 dots in it, and accordingly, if you try to use that knowledge to pursue your goal, it will not be fulfilled. And therefore, in our world, in order to make our livelihood, we cannot pursue it merely with selfish goal. So in order to fulfill one's own goal, because we live in a world where we are dependent on others, you will not be able to fulfill one's own goal as well, and therefore disregarding others' benefit, others' welfare, and trying to fulfill one's own goal is against reality. Whether it's a good thing that you want to pursue or a bad one that you want to pursue, those things happen because of many causes and conditions. And therefore, if you look at things from a broad perspective, knowing all the different dimensions, then you will actually be able to see the reality and be able to fulfill your goal. And therefore, dependent origination is not just about religion as such, which the Buddha has taught. So what is shown is that things are dependent on one another. And therefore, when you understand things from the point of view of interdependent nature of things, then you will have a very holistic perspective. So as followers of the Buddha, from lifetime to lifetime, we have to set our goal as liberation and omniscience. Even a non-believer, in order for them to have a happy life, they should have a warm heart, a good heart. This is taught in all the religions. But in Buddhism, why altruism is taught is because we don't want suffering, but want happiness. And suffering and happiness come from their own causes and conditions, and not without any causes and conditions. And therefore, if you think of others' welfare, you draw the maximum benefit. If you have harmed somebody, if you, because of anger, you may feel some satisfaction for having been able to hurt or harm somebody, but deep down you will never have true satisfaction. So if you harm somebody, it's quite natural to humans to feel very uncomfortable. So if you indulge in some wrongdoing, then you will never be confident. And whereas if you are altruistic, if you think of helping others, then you will be transparent and with others. So you will feel very comfortable within yourself. Whereas if you harm others, you will feel uncomfortable. In society also, someone who is kind is considered good. A short-tempered person is not considered good as such. So this is not about religion. This is about reality. Even dogs and cats, for example, a dog which actually barks at every other dog is not considered, doesn't get friends. Whereas a dog may be big, but if that dog is calm, then the other dogs also come around it. Therefore, teaching of the Buddha is meant for the different mental predispositions of human beings. Of course, we are not talking about propagating Buddhism in the world. I do not do that. There are many different religious traditions in the world. It's better for people to follow their own traditional, to keep to their traditional religions. I'll tell a story to you. In 1959-60, when we first came into exile, we didn't have much, many means, different means to make our living. and many people actually worked as road builders, whereas people from Lhasa, lay people, young, those who were able to escape into exile. So many of them were from Lhasa area, and then later people from the western part of Tibet fled into across the borders, and they were able to escape with their family. And then the parents worked as road builders in those days, and many children died, and many people also had great difficulty, and many died as well. And so one of the people who were road builders was from the western part of Tibet. He was a Tibetan official, and so he fled across the border, and somewhere at the border he's worked as road builder, and then the official himself died, and then his wife and his children were left behind. And then in around 63 or 64, the mother came to see me, and she described her hard, difficult life to me, related her experience, difficult experience to me. And there were many Christians in those days, missionaries who were helping people. And so this mother told me that the Christians helped her as well as her children, and she had 2 or 3 children, and the Christians, she said, took her children to school and gave them education, and they are very kind to him. She was very grateful, and so she told me because of this kindness, she had become a Christian in this life, but then in the next life she will be a Buddhist. So what this shows is the need to keep to one's own tradition and religion. Therefore, in the Western countries, whenever I give lectures, explain Buddhist principles, then I always tell that it's better to keep to their own religious traditions, because your culture, their culture is more or less has much been influenced by the Judeo-Christian faith. And so, but then some of my friends come to Buddhism, and then they actually criticize Buddhism later, and therefore it is better to always keep to one's own traditional religion generally. But as I was saying, we are not talking about propagating Buddhism to others, but what we need to do and what we can do is the philosophical teachings of the Buddha, and also the practice of compassion and patience, and cultivating conscientiousness, and combating the afflictive emotions. Whether you are, whichever religion you are following, there are these common messages of all the religious traditions. Love and compassion is considered very important in all religions, and this is also taught in Buddhism. And in Buddhism especially, there is teaching on how to cultivate compassion, how to cultivate love and loving kindness and patience. So these are common, and many of my Christian friends follow their own religion, but they take lessons from Buddhism as well. And so this is okay to do. So as Buddhists, we can also emulate the Christians in terms of serving society and giving education to others. We can learn, and there are these common practices in all the religious traditions, especially with regards to, with regards to dependent origination of things. Buddhism uses it for our religious practice, but in general, dependent origination is can be explained without touching religion as such, and many scientists also admire it these days. So of course, science is focused mostly on physical things, physical phenomena, but not very much on the mind or consciousness. And therefore, independence on many different causes and conditions in the physical world, we have all different kinds of results, and therefore the interdependent nature of things is something which is appreciated by scientists. Therefore, we can explain many things on the basis of the dependent origination. Of course, the idea of dependent origination comes from Buddhism, especially the masters, the scholars of Nalanda tradition, and in their text. But it can be used by everyone, without whether they are believers, non-believers, or even atheists, because it is very helpful to know the reality. Therefore, as Buddhists, what we should think is, we should not think of propagating Buddhism, but we should, from the teaching of the Buddha, what we can use to help the world, what we can contribute in terms of giving wisdom. And so we have to think about this. And even in the reality, when we recite the verse of refuge and bodhicitta, we make prayer to help all sentient beings. Whereas while we pray, whereas praying to benefit all sentient beings, if we really don't take care of the world, and just disregard whatever is going on, and even letting the world rot, that is not good. So, while we make prayer, while we pray to help all sentient beings, we cannot just think of beings in other worlds, but while thinking bad of the people and beings in this world, thinking how I can actually overcome this and that person, my enemies, and so forth. So if we don't think carefully, we might come to a point where we may say, these beings in the world are not those whom I need to or whom I should help. And therefore, what we should focus on is to help to make contribution to the world, so that people are able to become better, more warm-hearted, and also become more learned and wise. If you look in the world, there is so much killing going on. The animals that are killed for meat and so forth are looked at as if they are like toys, and there is no life at all in them. If you are not compassionate and kind to other animals, then until you suffer physically, and you may not feel compassion towards other human beings as well. And so the practice of compassion is for your own well-being as well. So if you are compassionate, you draw the benefit. Of course, material development is important, but we also need to promote love and compassion. And therefore, the teaching of the Buddha the messages such as love, compassion, and which are the basis, and also the idea or the theory of dependent origination are very relevant to today's world. So I've been telling people that the Buddhist literature can be divided into three categories of Buddhist science, which teach Buddhist about the physical nature of things, and psychology. These are science. For example, negative emotions can be identified as such and such, and when we do that, there's not talk about good and bad. As I said before also, when he taught the Four Noble Truths, he first said this is suffering, this is the origin of suffering, which is the cause of suffering, and then this is cessation, and this is the path. So he just introduced the Four Noble Truths in this way. So that's science. And then when we talk about the Four Noble Truths, and these come under the category of philosophy. And then we also make distinction between what are known as the positive phenomena and negative phenomena. And then engaging in with objects by the principle of elimination, or through affirmation, such as talking about the language and conceptions working through the principle of elimination. And so these are helpful to increase our knowledge and wisdom, whereas Buddhist religion is for Buddhists, such as talking about life after death, or something which is related to the Buddhist practitioners. We cannot use these explanations for Buddhist religion to Christians and say there is past future life. The Christians believe that this life itself was created by God, and so this is very powerful as well. So that to feel, to have a closer feeling towards God, and accordingly they will actually follow the will of God. And as I said before, because of different mental predispositions, to some people, the teaching on a creator, saying that the theistic religions are much powerful. So Buddha gave his teaching in accordance with the mental dispositions of his disciples. So he gave all these different teachings. Therefore, when it comes to religion, as Buddhists, we should practice Buddhism, Buddhist religion, whereas Buddhist science and Buddhist philosophy, through them we can actually make contribution to the whole world. And therefore, many of the contents of the over 300 volumes of Ganjur and Tenjur can be used to help and make contribution to the world. So after having studied these texts and having gained knowledge through study, listening, as well as reflection, so this kind of knowledge can be considered as a treasure of the whole world. So for the last 50 years, I've been meeting many people, atheists, non-believers, as well as believers, and mainly many scientists and scholars and experts. So after meeting with them, although I don't know much, I don't know science, nor modern subjects, nothing I know of these. I started learning English and since 1940. Becoming interested myself in English. I was in the beginning so very secretive about learning English, and the elder people in those days were not so appreciative. Maybe they thought that if the Dalai Lama, the young Dalai Lama, learned English, he might turn atheist or something like that. And then I also learned Chinese. So then, in the meantime, I had to stop learning English while learning science, because Chinese didn't like it. So in other words, I started learning English since 1940s, but I don't know. Still, I don't know much English. Although I don't know much, but when I meet with these experts, I don't fall far behind them. Why that is so is because of learning the over 300 different the contents of the over 300 different literature, and also especially learning them through logic and epistemology, following Dagnaga and the Jamakitti's tradition. And therefore, because of being able to do investigation into things and find reason to prove things, I've been able to point out that when listening to the scientists and experts about their explanations, I was able to relate them through reason. So when I interact with scholars and experts and scientists, I am not far behind, and therefore these literature that we have are very good for increasing our knowledge and wisdom. And many of these scientists and scholars are experts in their own, specialists in their own field. And when they explain to me their own from their research, I always find loopholes here and there. And I say that I can see where they could be, where I can pick on them. And then after having become very close to them, then I try to point out that you explained so and so, and if this is the case, then shouldn't it be like this as well? And if it's A, it shouldn't be the B, and so forth. So when I draw such conclusions, or then they say that, oh, now I have to think about this again. As we usually say in Tibetan, rubbing your head and saying like that. And therefore, the knowledge that we have in Tibetan is something which we can is very useful for the whole world to open up people's mind and increase their wisdom. Now, in a few days, there is going to be a meeting. I'll have a meeting with some scholars and scientists in Delhi on the 14th of January, and then from the 17th of January, I'll have some discussions with scientists in Drepung in South India. And so many scientists and scholars, intellectuals are paying attention to Buddhism. So what I was saying, trying to say was, in essence, the teachings that Buddha gave in accordance with their mental predispositions, if we could share it with others to open up their mind and increase their wisdom, it is very good. Otherwise, trying to set up Buddhist centers, Dharma centers here and there, and try to propagate Dharma is not going to be so good. There may be, of course, many, of course, there are many Westerners and foreigners who have found conviction in the teaching of the Buddha through reason. So in these regions, people who follow Buddhism in these countries and the West and other foreign countries follow Buddhism which didn't used to be their traditional religion. They follow Buddhism because of understanding, finding conviction in the teaching of the Buddha through reason. So they... So if we were to, if someone were to build a Christian church in Tibetan soil, we would not feel so comfortable, would we? And so similarly, it is the case with the other countries where they have their traditional Christian tradition to build Tibetan monasteries and so forth. They will not like. But what we should do is to try to do our best to contribute to their society from the heritage, the treasure that we have. So what I've said so far is, on the one hand, maybe meaningful, but many of you have heard me before, but there may be there are others who have not heard me before, and so I thought it may be beneficial to them to give some thought. Otherwise, it's been like killing the day. So we are on page number 67, verse 87. So in the Tibetan text, there is mention of a bambu. So bambu are sections after every certain number of verses. So bambu start at the beginning of the section, and then in the Tibetan text, chapters names are at the end of the chapter. So if someone actually tries to harm or tries to obstruct your success, then you become unhappy. So this should not be done. Even if your enemy is made unhappy, what is there for you to be joyful about? You merely wishing for them to be hurt did not cause them to be injured. And even if the enemy does not suffer as you had wished, what is there for you to be joyful about? If you say, "For I shall be satisfied," how could there be anything more wretched than that? This hook cast by the fishermen of disturbing conceptions is unbearably sharp. Having been caught on it, it is uncertain that I shall be cooked in cauldrons by the guardians of hell. The honors of praise and fame. So this is referring to you. What you wish is praise and fame. And the honor and praise and fame will not turn into merit of life or life. It will give me neither strength nor freedom from sickness, and will not provide any physical happiness. If I were aware of what held meaning for me, what value would I find in these things? If all I want is a little mental happiness, I should devote myself to gambling, drinking, and so forth. If for the sake of fame I give away my wealth or get myself killed, what can the mere word of fame do then? Once I have died, to whom will they give pleasure? When the sandcastle collapses, children howl in despair. So when you are become too emotional of receiving for receiving praise or criticism, this should not be done. Likewise, when my praise and reputation decline, my mind becomes like a little child. Since short-lived sounds are inanimate, they cannot possibly think of praising me. But as it makes the bestower of praise happy, my reputation is a source of pleasure for me. Whether this praise is directed at myself or someone else, how shall I be benefited by the joy? Since that joy and happiness is theirs alone, I shall not obtain even a part of it. If I do not find happiness in their happiness, then surely I should feel the same way towards all. And if this were so, then why am I unhappy when others find pleasure in that which brings them joy? Therefore, happiness arises from thinking I'm being praised is invalid. It is only the behavior of a child. So when others praise you could be detrimental to you. Praise and so forth distract me. When others praise you and you become famous, then you become very proud. Your arrogance increases. And many of the people who study Dharma, the monks and nuns, when they were poorer in their studies, then they have less arrogance, whereas as they go up the ladder of the classes and they become more and more learned and others praise them, then what they do is they become proud and arrogant, and then also they develop jealousy when they find others to be competitive. And then similarly, when people are poor and live a very simple life, then they are happier with each other, whereas as they grow in wealth and fame in society, then they develop pride, arrogance, jealousy, and so forth. And also undermine my disillusion. I start to envy those who have good qualities, and all the very best is destroyed. Therefore, are not those who are closely involved in destroying my praise and the like also involved in protecting me from falling into the unfortunate ramps? So, criticisms that you receive or they help you and therefore protect you from becoming proud, arrogant, and so forth. I, who am striving for freedom, so what our aim is the temporary goal of us is higher rebirth, and the ultimate is freedom or nirvana and omniscience. Do not need to be bound by material gain and honor, so why should I be angry with those who free me from this bondage? Those who wish to cause me suffering are like the Buddhas, bestowing waves of blessings. So when others criticize us and pick on our faults, what they helps is it can you may say that it can be caused to obstruct us from cultivating merit. Then, as they open the door for my not going to an unfortunate realm, why should I be angry with them? But what if someone should obstruct my gaining merit with them too? It is incorrect to be angry, for since there is no fortitude similar to patience, surely I should put it into practice. So when others criticize you or despise you and you become angry and retort, you are actually destroying the opportunity and wasting the opportunity for practicing patience. The reason here is given is if due to my own failings, I'm not patient with this enemy, which is the result, then it is only I who am preventing them, myself, from practicing this course for gaining merit. The practice of patience is needed and it's beneficial, and the opportunity for that is given by your enemy. And therefore, those who criticize you or harm you give you the opportunity to practice something very beneficial. A beggar is not an obstacle to generosity. When I'm giving something away, and I cannot say that those who give ordination are an obstacle to becoming ordained. There are indeed many beggars in this world, but scarce are those who inflict harm. For if I have not endured others, few beings will cause me harm. Therefore, just like treasure appearing in my house without any effort on my part to obtain it, I should be happy to have enemies, for they assist me in my conduct in awakening. So you should be happy to have encountered your enemies who try to harm you. Not only that, because this enemy criticizes me because of his or her criticism and provoking me anger, and I too see the disadvantages of becoming angry and see the benefit of patience, and therefore because I am able to practice patience with them, these enemies who provoke me anger, they are worthy of being given the very first fruit of my patience, for in this way they are the cause of it. So the enemies do not have the wish to actually give you any favor. In order to make you practice patience, they don't have the wish for that to happen. But why should my enemies are venerated? Has no intention for me to practice patience. Then why venerate the sacred Dharma? So it's not about whether they have the wish or intention to help you or not, benefit you or not. If it were the case, then regarding the cessation, true cessation that you develop, it doesn't have any wish to help you or benefit you. But because it helps, because cessation helps you, and therefore we pursue it. And then why venerate sacred Dharma? But is it fit for practice? So although this decision does not have any intention to help you, but it does not have any intention to harm you, but the enemy has the intention to harm you, although it doesn't have the intention to help you. But surely my enemy is not to be venerated, for they intend to cause me harm. But how could patience be practiced if, like doctors, people always strove to be good? So in emergency cases, you go through surgery, and the doctors, the surgeons, cut your body, and actually they take away or the different parts of the organs and so forth. Recently, I had an endoscope, so I cannot be angry with the doctors for having taken some small part of me for biopsy. And they said I have no problem with my digestive system. There's no disease. In the past, I had a gallstone taken away. So since then, I've been telling people that I am not a full human being. I don't have all my organs intact, because I'm missing the bile, gallbladder. Please, those of you who have a gallstone or gallbladder taken, removed, raise your hands. Please raise your hands if anyone had gallbladder removed. His Holiness saw who has gallbladder. So you cannot be angry with the doctors for having removed these organs, because they are thinking of helping you. And so if, like doctors, people always strive to be good, thus, since patient acceptance produces independence upon one with very little hateful mind. So an enemy is totally dedicated to harm you, and he or she provokes your anger, and therefore, because of that, you should practice patience. And therefore, the enemy is the one who gives you the opportunity to practice patience. Therefore, the Mighty One has said that the field of sentient beings is similar to the Buddha field, for many who have pleased them have thereby reached perfection. So including your enemies, all sentient beings who are poor sentient beings, and in relation to them, then you develop compassion, and then bodhicitta, and then you tread along the path and the grounds of bodhisattvas, and accumulate merit and wisdom. So all these are done in relation to and connection with sentient beings. And therefore, qualities of Buddha are gained from the sentient beings and the conquerors alike. So why do I not respect them in the same way as I respect the conquerors? Of course, we take refuge in the Buddha. We feel grateful for the sentient beings, for the Buddhas. But experiences like compassion and love come in relation to sentient beings. Because of suffering sentient beings, we can think of liberating them from suffering, and we can think of giving them benefit, and which is love. So merely by taking by practicing the principle of taking refuge in the three jewels will not give you enlightenment, but in relation to sentient beings, it will you will gain enlightenment. And then the great qualities, the excellent qualities of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, where do they come from? So Chandrakirti mentions that he praises or pays homage to great compassion, because the sacred Buddhahood and also Bodhicitta, they come from great compassion. You cannot practice compassion in relation to the Buddhas. You may have some compassion in relation to arhats, but compassion is mainly generated in relation to sentient beings, suffering sentient beings. And therefore, all excellent things that we experience come in relation to sentient beings. But what if someone obstructs my gaining merit? Oh, sorry. Of course, they are not similar in quality of their intention, but only in the fruits. So, of course, Shantideva is saying that he is not equating sentient beings with Buddhas for having the equal knowledge and good qualities, but because of their kindness to you. So it is in this respect that they have excellent qualities and are therefore said to be equal. Whatever merit comes from venerating one with 11 kind mind is due to the eminence of sentient beings, and in the same way the merit of having faith in the Buddha is due to the eminence of the Buddha. Therefore they are asserted to be equal in the share they have in establishing Buddha qualities, but none of them are equal in good qualities if with the Buddhas, who are boundless oceans of excellence. Even if the realms were offered, it would be insufficient paying veneration to those few beings in whom mere share of good qualities of the unique assemblage of excellence appear. Thus, since sentient beings have a share in giving rise to supreme Buddha qualities, surely it is correct to venerate them, as they are similar in merely this respect. Please read on. So, thinking along these lines, verse 19 onwards, 21, 22, very beneficial. So, if you're taking refuge in the Buddha, who has all the good qualities and who's free from all defects, this come from the compassion toward the sentient beings, and therefore the Buddhas consider sentient beings to be very dear to them, for the sake of whom they have cultivated bodhicitta and tread the path and then became enlightened. So if while venerating the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, if we disregard sentient beings, what would it be like to the Buddhas? What would they think about us? So if you like, if you invite some people to a party or for a lunch or something, and if you like chili, but without thinking about your guests. If you put lots of chili in the food, what would it be like? Even ordinary people will not appreciate this. So you have to consider your guests and whether they like chili or not, and you have to know them and accordingly do offer the food. So the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas protect sentient beings. And if we disregard these sentient beings and then say, I take refuge, it's like saying something and doing something else. And if we use them or bully the sentient beings, and what we say and what we do are incompatible. If you have faith in the Buddha, then you should also respect sentient beings who are seen as the same child of a mother by the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. Verse number 123. 24. Therefore, as I have caused harm to living beings, today I openly declare all my unwholesome acts that have brought displeasure to the compassionate ones. Please bear with me, O Lords, for this displeasure I have caused you. From now on, in order to delight the Tathagatas, from now on, from this time on, I will not harm even a single sentient being who are cared for by Buddhas and Bodhisattvas from now on in order to delight the Buddhas. And I will actually serve the sentient being, become their servant. And delight the Tathagatas, I shall serve the universe and definitely cease to cause them harm. Although many beings may kick and stamp upon my head, even at the risk of dying, may I delight the protectors of the world. There is no doubt that those with the nature of compassion regard all these beings the same as themselves. So in the practice of patience, you think of not harming any sentient beings. If you can help them, you help them, but not harm them at all. Regard all these beings. Furthermore, so if you do that, then this is the main practice which will please the Buddhas. So this is the best means to achieve your own goal. Furthermore, those who in this Buddha nature as the same nature of sentient beings also see the Buddhas themselves. Why then do I not respect? So if you are harmed by your enemies and if you don't retaliate and stay calm, then you'll be happy. So pleasing living beings delights the Tathagatas. And so when you find someone very, very patient, and people would say, actually praise them, saying, oh, this person is very difficult to get angry, and he's very patient and resilient, and so forth. And many tourists who go to Tibet, Chinese as well as Westerners, praise Tibetans, saying that they are very warm-hearted and they are all smiles everywhere. It perfectly accomplishes my own purpose as well, it says. So this is true. So even if you meet with the provocations, if you don't let it provoke you or disturb your mind, then you will be you have peace of mind. So in such a state of mind, then you will be able to think. and reason out why you should not get angry at your enemy. So you may not seek fame or anything like that through such practice, but you will, people will actually talk about you, and you will be famous. In addition, it dispels the main pain and misery of universe. Therefore, as I said before, we have all these problems in the world which are rooted in this undisciplined mind. Therefore, I should always practice it. For example, should some of the king's men cause harm to many people, far-sighted ones would not return the harm, even if they were able to do so. For they see that these men are not alone, but are supported by the might of the king. Likewise, I should not underestimate weak beings who cause me a little harm, for they are supported by the guardians of hell and by all the compassionate ones. So, behaving like the subject of that fiery king, I should please all sentient beings. Even if such a king were to become angry, could he cause the pain of hell, which is the fruit I would have to experience by displeasing sentient beings? And even if such a king were to be kind, he could not possibly grant me Buddhahood, which is the fruit I would obtain by pleasing sentient beings. So if you think of helping others, sentient beings, and not harm them at all, then you will reach, there's no doubt that you will reach Buddhahood. Even in this life, you will have fame, you will have good health, everything will come to you. And why do I not see that my future attainments of Buddhahood, as well as glory, renown, and happiness in this very life, all come from pleasing sentient beings? So having overcome by reducing the negative afflictive emotions, and you reach you progress along the path, and being able to overcome all the negativities. But even with, when you are not at such a stage, if you can reduce them, negative afflictions, it will be helpful. So while in cyclic existence, patience causes beauty, health, and renown. Because of these, I shall live for a very long time and win the extensive pleasures of a universal chakra king. So we are not resorting to scriptural authority alone, but using lots of reasoning to practice patience. So this is the 6th chapter. Then, so having cultivated patience, the 3 types of patience. Patience of accepting suffering, and also patience of ascertaining the Dharma or truth. So when you meet with different difficulties to obstacles to practice Dharma, having patience, we should develop enthusiasm. For awakening will dwell only in those who exert themselves. So even in one lifetime, to have good knowledge, you have to put lots of effort over many years. You cannot become an expert or a scholar within a short period of time. So scientific and technological advancements have happened over many hundreds of years. So there's a difference between the 2 effort and joyous effort. So Dzolwa, or mere effort, can be put in relation to even bad things. But Zundu joyous enthusiasm is related to virtue. Just as there's no movement without wind, so merit does not occur without enthusiasm. What is enthusiasm? If it is finding joy in what is wholesome. Its opposing factors are explained as laziness, attraction to what is harmful, and despising oneself out of despondency. So with regard to the first one, because of attachment to the pleasurable taste of idleness, because of craving for sleep, and because of having no disillusion with the misery of cycling existence, laziness grows very strong. So we talk about people being lazy. Sometimes we become complacent, saying, "Oh, we can do it later." And then the second type of laziness with which we are attracted towards trivial things, whereas we have the time to practice spirituality. We do not do that, but get carried away by some trivial things. And then, when it comes to practicing the Dharma, you become discouraged, thinking, oh, the paths, the means that you have to cultivate are very difficult, and then it's also difficult to reach the goal. And so you despise yourself. So that's the third kind of laziness. So in order to encourage yourself, enmeshed in the snare of disturbing conceptions, I've entered the snare of birth. Why am I still not aware that I live in the mouth of the Lord of Death? Do I not see that he is systematically slaughtering my species? Whoever remains soundly asleep surely behaves like a buffalo with a butcher. When having blocked off every escape route, the Lord of Death is looking for someone to kill. How can I enjoy eating? And likewise, how can I enjoy sleep? For as long as death is actually approaching, then I shall accumulate merit. So this is talking about the death of impermanence of death, and inspiring yourself. This human life found once may slip away, and therefore one should think of the impermanence of death and feel inspired to practice the Dharma. The Gongdang Tenpa Dharma says that. Even if I then put a stop to laziness, what will be the use? That is not the time. And so at the time of death, nothing but Dharma helps is shown on what is shown here. When this has not been done, when this is being done, and when this is only half finished, suddenly the Lord of Death will come, and the thought will like, oh no, I am done for. Their faces flowing with tears and their eyes red and swollen with sorrow. My relatives will finally lose hope, and I shall behold the vision of the messengers of death, tormented by the memory of my wrongdoings and hearing the sounds of hell. In terror I shall clothe my body in excrement. So when death befalls you, then even if you regret, that's too late. So while you have the time, while you are able to practice Dharma, you should think about the impermanence of death. And then when death actually comes, you don't have to regret. As the Kadamba masters say, the best of the practitioners are very happy for death. And then and intermediate practitioners are not so unhappy. And then the practitioners actually think that it's like they think that it's like changing one's clothes when you die from one life and go to the next. And so the second type of practitioners are quite confident about what will happen to them. And then the least type of practitioners are the do not regret death. They think that they have done their best, and they don't regret when they come to die. And I shall be tormented by memory of. And if even in this life I shall be gripped with fear like that of a fish being rolled in, why even mention the unbearable agonies of hell that will result from my wholesome deeds? Oh, unwholesome deeds. Next verse, on page 78. Without putting effort and with enthusiasm, and if you wish for some goals, this is something you cannot achieve. So how can I remain at ease like this when I have committed the action that will bear fruit? In my delicate infant's body encountering boiling acids in the hell of tremendous heat, much harm will befall, much harm befalls those with little forbearance, and so who are easily disturbed, provoked, and those who want results without making any effort. While as clasped by death, they shall cry like the gods, "Oh no, I am overcome by misery." Lying upon the boat of a human body, free yourself from the great river of pain. As it is hard to find this boat again, this is no time to sleep, you fool. And so distraction will has nothing, no benefits that we can draw from distraction. You may watch television shows, and it's may be very entertaining, and you may have satisfaction. But once the show is over, then it's mere memory. And if you are interested in music, while you're listening to the music, interesting music, you have maybe some happiness and joy. But once the music is over, then again, it's a memory. And similarly, it's the case with the other objects of senses, like odor and taste. They may give some pleasure, but they are not lasting. But those experiences which are drawn on the basis of the mind, the mental consciousness, then they are more satisfying. For example, if you think about the qualities or of taking refuge, and also faith or compassion, the view of emptiness, these will give you some relaxation, and therefore they are, since they are not based on sensory experiences as such, they are more stable. So the pleasure drawn on the basis of sensory experiences are not very transient, and they are almost like deception. So they're very ordinary. But mainly, if you have to, all the religious practitioners try to draw truth, uh, satisfaction on the basis of the mind. When the, for example, Christian practitioners put full single-pointed, have single-pointed faith in God, they are really satisfied. And so I have friends, Christian friends, who, when they are fully engaged in with God, prayer to God, they even shed tears. And so these experiences are not based on the five senses, and therefore it is more stable. They are more stable. And so, as I explained yesterday, the sensory perceptions are more stimulated by external stimulants, and they are not very stable. They don't have a very stable basis, whereas the qualities that you develop on the basis of the sixth consciousness, the mind, are stable because of this mind itself being the stable basis. So we all want happiness. Verse number 15 read. So in order to have a very strong and powerful and stable happiness and joy, and so sometimes people, after having worked hard in order to have a happy life, they work hard in their business and so forth, and because of feeling tired and unhappy, then they go around on a vacation, and in order to forget all these discomfort. But this is only temporary relief. When they come back, of course, all the problems are still there. So when you are unhappy, when you have problems, if you can make yourself so strong that you are not swayed by these problems, then these problems with themselves will not disturb your peace of mind at all. And so while being amidst problems, if you can keep your peace of mind, then it is very beneficial, very powerful. So everyone, if you try to shun some pain or suffering or problems by distracting yourself with some entertainment, it's very temporary relief, temporary means to overcome. So it's like taking some pain reliever. I should never indulge in despondency by entertaining such thoughts as, how shall I be awakened? So you should have the pride, that confidence that you can do things, and then you should also have mindfulness and introspection. And earnestly take control of myself. Verse number 16. Without indulging despondency, I should gather the support for enthusiasm and earnestly take control of myself. So this is showing how to cultivate enthusiasm or the joyous effort. And then you gather the different conditions for developing enthusiasm. And then by seeing the equality between self and others, I should practice exchanging self for others. So in the concentration chapter, this practice of exchanging itself and others will be explained. In cultivating bodhicitta, this is done. So here it's just mentioned. I should never indulge in despondency by entertaining such thoughts. How shall I ever awaken? How the Tathagatas who speak what is true have uttered this truth. If they develop the strength of their exertion, even those who are flies, mosquitoes, bees, insects will win the unsurpassable awakening, which is so hard to find. It will be so if I do not forsake the Bodhisattva's way of life. So one of the main reasons for us to be confident about the practices is because of the Buddha nature. The very nature of the mind being such that the defilements are not in the intrinsic nature of the mind. So the defilements can be eliminated from the basic mind, and there is the powerful antidote against these defilements. So with regard to the teaching of the Buddha, first he taught the Four Noble Truths, and then gave the second, the Buddha turned the second wheel of Dharma, which is the Perfection of Wisdom Sutras. As I said, during the first turning of the wheel, the Four Noble Truths, the Buddha showed the selflessness of persons. And then things are actually taught to have self-characteristic features. Whereas in the second turning of the wheel, the Dharma, the Buddha taught that there is no self-characteristic features of self-defined characteristic of phenomena. And so the Perfection of Wisdom Sutras teach that things, emptiness, things beginning with the form up to omniscience are all empty of inherent existence. And Buddha goes through these different topics, different subjects or objects like form, order and so forth, and then say these are empty of inherent existence. In Shantideva's Shiksha Samuchaya, this is done. And first he goes through different things and say they are empty of inherent nature, and then at the end of each section he says all of these are merely in name and concept. So emptiness doesn't mean nihilism, but if it were nihilism, then we cannot talk about the ground, path, and result. But because emptiness means dependent origination, therefore the paths, grounds, and results are the basis. Paths and results are possible. So since things are dependently originated, they are without any independent existence. And therefore, in the second turning of the wheel, the defilements are said to be temporary, adventitious. And in the third turning of the wheel, in one set of third turning of the wheel, there is the sutra of unraveling the intention, which shows the philosophical view of Chittamatras. But there's another set of the third turning of the wheel sutra, which is which comprises the Tathagata Garbha Sutra. So what this shows is the true path, the ultimate true path is shown there. And so the second and third turning of the wheel actually explain in greater detail what is taught in the Four Noble Truths teaching. The cessation, true cessation, and true path are explicated further in the second and third turnings of the wheel of the Dharma. And so in Abhisamaya Alamkara, there's teaching on the Buddha nature, and the same verse is also found in Mahayana Uttara Tantra. So since all these mosquitoes, flies, and insects have Buddha nature, and therefore the defilements in their mind are something which can be overcome. And so, if that is the case, it says, if I do not forsake the Bodhisattva's way of life, why should someone like myself, who has been born in the human race, not attain awakening, since I am able to recognize what is beneficial and what is of harm? Nevertheless, it frightens me to think that I may have to give away my arms and legs. So when these practices are mentioned, then you may feel frightened. Without discriminating between what is heavy and what is light, I am reduced to fear through confusion. So what is said in the Ratnavali, the jewel garland by Nagarjuna, is very helpful to increase the power of one's wisdom and method, which is also said, mentioned in Madhyamaka Avatara by Chandrakirti. So until you reach a point where you are able to give your arms, legs, and your body, I mean, you are not actually prescribed to do so in the Bodhisattva practice. So without discrimination, for over countless myriads of eons, I have been cut, stabbed, burnt, and flayed alive innumerable times, but I have not awakened. So these the hardships that you go through in the process of cultivating the path, there is an end to them. So if you have the aspiration to attain the goal of omniscience, however long it may take for you, if you feel determined to single-pointedly pursue that path leading to the goal, then you will have true contentment, satisfaction, which means not just being having some kind of a pleasure, but a pleasant experience, feeling, but you feel that whatever you are doing is always good for you. You are doing something worthy, and therefore your life has become meaningful. And in this way, if you go from lifetime to lifetime, you will approach closer and closer, nearer and nearer to Buddhahood. Yet the suffering involved in my awakening will have a limit. It is like the suffering, for example, it is like the suffering of having an incision made. So if in order to take out some diseased an organ, and in order to remove and destroy greater pain. Even doctors eliminate illness with unpleasant medical treatment. So in order to overcome manifold suffering, I should be able to put up with some discomfort. Yet the supreme physician does not employ common medical treatments such as these. With an extremely gentle technique, he remedies all the greatest ills. At the beginning, the guide of the world, encourages the beings of such things as food. Later, when accustomed to this, one may progressively start to give away even one's flashes. At such a time when my mind is developed to the point of regarding my body as like a food, then what hardship would there be? So having forsaken all transgression, then there would be no suffering, and due to wisdom, there would be no lack of joy. But my own mind is afflicted by mistaken conceptions, and my body is caused harm by unwholesome deeds. So having mounted the horse of an awakening mind that dispels all discouragement and weariness, who, when they know of this mind that proceeds from joy to joy, would ever lapse into despondency? So next verse are talking about gathering the forces of to practice this path. The supports when working for the sake of living beings as aspiration, steadfastness, joy, and rest. Aspiration is developed through fear of misery and by contemplating the benefits of aspiration itself. Thus, in order to increase my enthusiasm, I should strive to abandon its opposing forces, to amass the support of aspiration, self-confidence, joy, and rest, to practice in earnest, and to become strong in self-control. I shall have to overcome the boundless faults of myself and others. And in order to destroy each of these faults alone, I may have to strive until the ocean of eons is exhausted. So we have all kinds of negative, the disturbing conceptions. It's like innumerable. For example, there are meditations on to overcome attachment, or we have meditations on where you visualize the entire field being filled with skeleton and so forth. So whatever is a compound phenomena finally disintegrates. So there are all these many different wrongdoings or faults against which we have all kinds of antidotes to each of them. So what these verse 37. Verse 39, but now in previous lives this deprivation has arisen because of my lack of aspiration for Dharma. Who would ever reject this aspiring for Dharma? 40 also finished. 41. Physical pain, mental unhappiness, all the various kinds of fear as well as separation from what is desired all arise from an unwholesome way of life. However, by committing wholesome actions which are motivated by aspiration in the mind, whenever I go, wherever I go, I shall be presented with tokens of fruits. And verse 44 shows the benefits of virtue and the faults of non-virtuous actions. So the most extensive sutra showing the Bodhisattva practices, the extensive Bodhisattva practices is Avatamsaka Sutra, which in Tibetan we have 6 volumes, and Chinese translation seems to have more volumes than that. And there are other texts which are more extensive in Tibetan but not in Chinese, and there are certain texts in the Tenjur which we have in Tibetan translation but not in Chinese, and some people are doing translation of those texts which are not in Chinese but in Tibetan. So we have to actually interact with other Buddhists from other countries and try to actually make up those texts which are missing in one tradition but extant in others. So in Varanasi University, this project is being carried out. So therefore I should aspire for virtue, and with great respect acquaint myself with it. Having taken the wholesome manners in the Vajradhaja, I should then proceed to acquaint my mind with self-confidence. First of all, I should examine well what is well done, to be done, to see whether I should pursue it or cannot undertake it. So you always have to check when you have to do something, you have to check whether you should do or not, and you should do what are the difficulties that you may encounter, and then you should decide whether you should actually pursue it or not. If unable to do it, it's best to leave it. But once I have started, I must not withdraw. So many of us start some project and then leave it in the middle. In the middle of the project, we just give it up. So this should not be done. So having checked whether you can do something or not, well, then once you find that you can do it, then you decide. And there's a Tibetan saying which says, you might fall 9 times, but you have to rise up 9 times. So you have to continue, persevere in your whatever you have decided to do until you fulfill the goal. So then if I do, then this habit will continue in our other lives, and wrongdoing and misery will increase. Also, other actions done that at the time of its fruition will be weak and will not accomplish. So self-confidence here is not about being arrogant, but you are actually talking about taking on the responsibility on your shoulder. Powerless, this mind disturbed, people in this world are unable to benefit themselves, therefore I shall do it for them, since unlike me, these beings are incapable. Even if others are doing an inferior task, why should I sit? So there is you have self-confidence where you are actually arrogant, which is an afflictive emotion, where you disregard others, where you belittle others, and you hold yourself more important. So you should have self-confidence. It says likewise, if my self-confidence is weak, I shall be injured by the slightest downfall. How can those who, out of faint-heartedness, have given up trying to find liberation because of this deficiency? So if you have low self-esteem, then you will never be able to accomplish your goal. Yet even the greatest obstacle will find it hard to overcome one with a frame mind. So you should have self-confidence, and so here we are talking about having realistic self-confidence after examining the things and having found the reasons, good reasons to actually support your goal, then you should pursue them. Therefore, with a steady mind, I shall overcome for all faults. For if I'm defeated by all four, my wish to vanquish the three realms will become a joke. I will conquer everything and nothing at all shall conquer me. I, a child of the lion, like conqueror, should remain self-confident in this way. Whoever has self-importance is destroyed by it. So here the term for self-confidence and the self-importance are in Tibetan ngagil. So ngagil. So with the self-confidence, it is not going to be the self-confidence. When you have self-confidence, that self-confidence will not be an afflicted mind, afflictive emotion as such, whereas the former are under the sway of the enemy of self-importance. Inflated by disturbing conceptions of my self-importance, I shall be led by it to the lower realms. It destroys the joyous festival of being human. I shall become a slave, eating the food of others, stupid, ugly, feeble, in every way disrespected. Tough people bloated by conceit are also counted among the self-importance. Tell me, what is more pathetic than this? So what you are saying in these is that you will not let yourself be swayed by the afflictive emotions, but then you're saying that you will actually defeat them. Whoever seizes self-confidence in order to conquer the enemy of self-importance, they are the self-confident ones, the victorious heroes. And in addition, whoever definitely conquers the spread of this enemy, the self-importance, completely wins the fruit of the conqueror, fulfilling the wishes of the world. So you are not letting yourself be overpowered by disturbing conceptions, but actually to overpower them and by looking down upon them and actually bringing them to your servitude. And I shall enjoy them in 1,000 ways. If I myself made a crowd with disturbing conceptions, I shall endure them in 1,000 ways. Like a lion among foxes, I will be not affected by disturbing hosts. Just as men will guard their eyes when greater danger and turmoil occur, likewise I shall never be swayed by the disturbances within my mind. Even at times of great strife, it would be better for me to be burned to have verse 66 finished. So this is about developing self-confidence. And then up to this, and next comes the practice or the power of discarding or so this body that we have found has come from delusion and karma, and therefore it has the tendency to produce more the disturbing conceptions and karma. Whereas when the disturbing conceptions wear out, then you will reach a state where you have no difficulty overcoming them. So when my strength declines, I should leave whatever I'm doing in order to be able to continue with it later. So when you are doing some practice, your mind feel tired and bodily and physically, mentally. Then you take rest in order to be able to continue the practice later. Having done something well, I should put it aside with the wish to accomplish what will follow. So when you do your practice, you should actually do them in stages. So as you pursue the former practices, the earlier practices, then and builds up, then you should progress further and further. So this is talking about, next verse is talking about mindfulness and introspection. Just as an old warrior approaches the swords of an enemy upon the battlefield, so when you shall I avoid the weapons of disturbing conceptions and skillfully bind this enemy. So when you actually combat with the disturbing conceptions, you should not be inflicted by them, but overpower them. If someone dropped a sword during a battle, so if you weaken your mindfulness, if your mindfulness weakens, what happens? What's wrong with that? There's great fault in it. And also, when you are overcome with delusions, that also is dangerous. So if someone drops a sword, so how do you cultivate mindfulness and introspection? Is shown by these verses. 69 onwards. So when we recite the Sutra of the Three Heaps or the General Confession, we usually mention the different negative actions and misdeeds we have committed one by one. So having put effort, as a result of having put effort, and then you become skilled or mastered, you master the skills to engage in the practice of joyous effort. So this is with regard to the verse 75. So where you become, your mind becomes very serviceable to put to task, to work on meditation. Verse 76. So this is the 7th chapter. Let's stop here. It's 5 minutes to 11:30. Shall we stop here, dismiss this session?